Hi, I'm Zacharia Ahmed. This is my A-level computer science project, which is a chess program. And in this video, I'll go through the program and carry out a range of tests to make sure that it all works as intended. So first, we're going to test logging in with the correct username and the correct password. We're going to use this account and this username and this password. So if I go and I type 1001 94743 student 3, then it successfully logged me in. We're going to test the correct username but an incorrect password. So I'm going to type the same username I typed before, but I'm going to put a completely different password such as QWERTY@123. And when I click login, it says incorrect username or password. Now if I type a completely random username and I put in a password of a account that already exists, if I click login now, it also says incorrect username or password because although the password is correct, the username does not exist. Finally, if we put incorrect username and an incorrect password, then it should not let us in. So incorrect username or password. Another feature of the login function is that it should automatically take attendance when a student logs in. As I just logged in, it has this record in, so I'm just going to delete this record, save it, and show that when I refresh it, it doesn't come back, so it's permanently deleted. And now I'm just going to log back in using the correct username and the correct password. And now if I refresh the database, you can see the record has come back with the correct username and the correct date. This can then be used by a member of staff to search up any date and get a list of all the student ID numbers who joined Chess Club that date. And if I log in again for the second time in the same day, then the data does not get added on twice. So now let's test the register function. If I click create an account and I put student2 and a username that already exists with a normal password, and I click create an account, it will send a message saying username that already exists. What's happening here is the client function is sending a request to the server, which then checks the database and returns this error message. But now if I change it to a username that doesn't exist and I click create an account, you can see it does work. And if I go to the database and refresh it, you can see the new record there. Now for the next test, I'm just going to delete this record and save it. And now I'm going to create an account, student2. And for the username, we're going to use a username that is invalid. But I'm going to put a correct password. So student_1. And when I click create an account, it says please enter a valid user number. This uses a regular expression to detect whether the number is a student ID number that we use in college. And so it won't accept ID numbers that are not in the same format as the college database. So now let's put in a valid username, but I put a password of A and A. Then when I click create an account, it will say password is too short. The minimum required length of a password is 9 characters, so I'm going to do a boundary test and put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And click create an account, and it still says password is too short. But when I add in one more character, error is not that it's too short, it's that it needs uppercase symbols and numbers. A quick check is if I take a character away from this, so the passwords do not match, and I click create an account, it will say passwords do not match. And final test, if I change this back to a invalid username, then it should not let me in. So invalid username and invalid password will also not work. So now that we're logged in, I'm going to check the themes page. If I decide I want to change my theme to a blue color, then if I go to the database and I refresh it, you can see that Zacharia Ahmed has a theme 2, and the themes are stored in this table, which is there are 4 different themes for the 4 different colors, and I can change it to red, and goes to theme ID 4, and then the brown, theme ID 3, and back to the green, theme ID 1. And now the rules page, if I click the rules, it gives me a page full of all the rules. All information is on this page. So if I click settings, you can see that my account type is a student, so I only get the option to change my name or change my password or log out. However, if I log out and log in as a staff, then if I click settings, you can see that the account type is admin, so therefore I get this admin options. So I'm just logging in back with a student account and going to settings, and I'm going to change my name to John Smith. You can change your name to anything, so I have not added any validation to this. And if I click save, then you can see first name John, last name Smith, and I can go back to the database, and if I update it, you can see this has changed to John Smith. So now if I click change password and I put in the correct current password and a new password, and I click change password, it says successfully changed, and I can go to the database and refresh it, and you can see that my password has changed. And so I just changed it back, and I'm going to change my password again, but this time I'm going to put an incorrect password with the same password that I want. And click change password, and it says incorrect password. And now if I click change password again and put in the same password that is on the database, but I put an invalid password, then when I click change password, it says password needs to contain uppercase, symbol, and a number. And it should also produce an error message if the passwords do not match. If I take a few symbols off of there and I click change password, it says password do not match. And finally, if I put in an incorrect password and an incorrect or an invalid new password, then it should show incorrect password. And if I click log out, it should bring me back to the login page. I've just logged in with an admin account, and as you can see, we have admin options. If I click admin options, one of the options is to reset or erase the attendance. If I go to the database and go to the attendance table, you can see these 3 records which the attendance have been recorded. If I click erase attendance, it will go back to this page. And if I refresh the database, you can see the attendance table has been dropped and remade. We also have an option to create an admin. So if I put first name of Ed and Smith, and I want to put E Smith, this username already exists. So if I put a password, then it should say username already exists, which again sends a request to the server which checks the database and returns this error message. But now if I put in normal data, so John Doe, J Doe, and a password, then when I click create admin, we return to this page, and if I go to the database, refresh it, you can see John Doe, password, and admin. And so I'm just going to go ahead and delete this and save it. And now I'm going to create the same admin, John Doe, J Doe, but I'm going to put a password that does not follow the security measures. And create admin, and it says password needs to be uppercase, symbol, and number. Back to this page, we can see we have all the users, and we can sort them by username, first name, last name, and account type, which starts with the admin and then ends with the students. But you can also reverse the order by clicking this button. So now it's ascending and now it's descending, and same works with all the other options. So I just added a few more users, and if I go to admin options, you can see all the users, they exceed this space, and I can click previous and next to cycle through all the accounts. And when I click one of these accounts, you can see I have the option to reset the password or delete the user. If I reset the password and I go to the database, you can see that the password, which was originally student_123, if I refresh, it changed to password_123. I've just added this user back in and put the attendance data back in, and the game, which you can see uses the same ID, and the account game link, which also uses the same ID. And I'm just going to delete this account using the admin settings. So if I go back to admin options, John Doe, and I click delete user, then if I go to the database and I refresh, you can see that that account has been deleted, the attendance with that account has been deleted, the game has been deleted, and the account game link has also been deleted. Now onto the game logic itself. If I click 2-player mode, we can test the pawn move. So on the first move, the pawn can move either 1 square forward or it can move 2 square forwards, but it cannot move a square forward if there is another piece in front of it. However, it can take diagonally. It also has a special move called en passant, which when a player has a passed pawn in the first move, then on that move and only that move, it can take. However, if they decide not to take, then I do not have the option to en passant. It also has the option for when the pawn goes to the end of the board, it can decide to create a knight, a bishop, a rook, or a queen. So if I change it to a knight, it shows the piece as a knight. And if I change it to a bishop, it changes to a bishop, a rook changes to a rook, and now a queen, and it changes to a queen. Next are the knight moves. The knight can only move in an L shape. So at the start, they can move to those 2 squares, but now they can move at any of these squares. And they can also take wherever they land. Here you can see all the moves possible for this knight. The bishop can move in diagonals. So this bishop can move at any of these squares, and so can this bishop, but they are blocked when it's their own piece, and they can take, or they're stopped when a piece of another color has stopped them, so they can't go to this square, but they can take. The rooks can move in horizontal or vertical directions, so they can move to all these squares, but they are stopped when it's a piece of their own, and they can stop after taking a piece of another color. The queen can combine the functions of the rook and the bishop. So if I have 2 queens over here, this queen can move in diagonal directions and horizontal and vertical directions. The king can move 1 square forward in any direction. However, it can't move if it's going to be putting itself in check. So if it moves to any of these squares, then this pawn can take it. So it's limited to where it can go. Now it can move any 1 square in any direction. Another fancy king move is the ability to castle. So if I take my bishop and knight out, then this king can now have the option to castle, and it moves 2 spaces that way, and the rook comes next to it. You also have the ability to long castle, so if I take this queen away, then this king can do a long castle on the queen side, where it moves 2 spaces and the rook comes next to it. Now the rules of chess is you cannot castle if your king is in check or any of the squares that it moves through is in check. And as you can see, the bishop is now threatening this piece, so if I click the king, it does not have the option to castle. Here we can see that the bishop should be able to move at any of these diagonals. However, because it is protecting the king from this bishop, the moves are now filtered to moves that will only be allowed if it doesn't put the king in check. If I put the king in check, then all the moves that I can usually play when I'm not in check are now gone, and the only moves I can play is moves that will bring my king out of check. To test if the system can detect checkmates, I'm going to play the famous Fool's Mate, where when the queen goes there, it is a 2-move checkmate, and it says black wins. Same thing goes for the white side. This is the Scholar's Mate, so if I move the queen there, it says white wins. So now if it wants to detect a draw or stalemate, if I move my queen here, it will say draw because the king has no legal moves and the pieces can't move anywhere. It is also a draw if you only have a king and a knight, a king and a bishop. It should not be a draw if you have two bishops on different squares, but it is a draw if you have bishops that are on the same square. So if I take this, it's a draw. You also have the draw where you play 50 moves without ever taking or ever capturing or making a pawn move. And if a draw has happened and the game has been over, then I cannot click any of these pieces and move them. The undo function in the two-player mode has also been implemented so that if I make a series of moves, I can click undo and it will reverse the moves that I've played. Now on to one-player mode, we have easy, medium, hard, and stockfish depth 13. Easy, medium, and hard uses my own algorithm, which uses the Negamax algorithm, whereas the stockfish depth 13 uses the Stockfish Online API. Okay, starting with easy level, it looks one move ahead. So if I play a series of moves, and if I move this pawn here, it will decide to take it even though my queen can take its knight, because it's only looking one move ahead. Whereas if I play with medium, then if I play a move and I move this here, it will decide not to take it because it knows that my queen can take that knight. However, if I move my queen here, the knight can then take my queen because it knows that the knight can't be taken. So when I click hard level and I play a move, the AI will look 3 moves ahead at all the moves possible and try and find the best move that will give it the best value. But because it's looking 3 moves ahead, it does take a bit longer than medium and easy level. So just for now, I set up the board to look like this by default, and when I click easy mode, if I move my pawn over there, then black has an opportunity to checkmate by moving his queen over here. And on easy mode, it would be able to find that pretty quickly because it is a one move checkmate. Similarly for medium, it would take a little bit longer, but because it's looking at more possibilities, but it will eventually find this checkmate. And on hard mode, it would still find the checkmate. There we go. The stockfish level plays a move by turning the board into a fen notation and sending that fen notation to the stockfish API, which then in return sends back the best move according to the stockfish engine. And as you can see, it plays quite fast at a depth 13. Now I'm going to test the local play, and I've loaded 2 programs for this, and when I click local it says waiting for players, and then when I click local on this program, it joins the game. Notice that there's a timer up here for the chess clock, and when I send a move from this program, the chess clock stops and starts the second program's chess clock, and the move is sent to this program. Now this works over different devices, but I'm representing it using one device so that I can show you that it all works. Suppose this player wants to resign while this player is making his move. If he clicks back, he will enter the main menu, and the player will also enter the main menu without it crashing. And if they enter a game and this time his clock is running and he clicks resign, he would still enter the main menu, and so will the second program. Finally, if this program wants to quit rather than resign and just immediately turn the program off, the second program will not crash and will enter the main menu. And now if they go into a game and I play the Fool's Mate, then it will recognize that the game has ended and it will send them back to the main menu. And finally, when you end the game with a stalemate, it will recognize that there's a stalemate and it will send them both into the main menu. So now if I go to archive, you can see all the games I've played, who I've played them with, and whether I won, lost, or it ended in a draw. If I look at the last game I just played, you can see that I can cycle through each move and analyze them myself. And I can flip the board to see white's perspective or black's perspective. And it starts off with the perspective that you played as. So I played as black on this account. So therefore it shows it in black's perspective, but you can always flip it to white's perspective. And after each game is played online, you get an update on the game table with the game ID, white player ID, black player ID, and the PGN. And you can go to the account's game link and it gives you the game ID and the account that links to that game ID. Notice that there are for each game there are 2 records, one for each player. And that's everything about my project. I hope you liked it. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.